Well, good morning and welcome to the Tuesday Coffee Chat. I'm here today with Shawn Mills from Hack My Homestead. I almost said the other name of your old business. And Kiri Torgler of Thunderhill Farms. Guys, welcome to the show. How's it going this morning?
Beautiful morning in northern Wisconsin.
Yeah,
Shawn's just quiet.
everything's solid here in western Middle Tennessee.
Western Middle Tennessee. I'm in the middle of Middle Tennessee.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's in your cup today?
Holler roast.
Holler roast all around. All right. Well, this is going to be a fun discussion today. We kind of loosely organized ourselves around the power of community and how awesome our community is. And Shawn's just gotten off of a week deployment with Grindstone Ministries.
Yep.
And Kiri is putting together the party of the year at Special Operations Equipment right now. So there's a lot going on. Kiri, I'm going to start with you. How did you find yourself in a position to be talking to John Willis and him to say, hey, 2 months from now, can we have a giant party that would usually require most people 9 months to plan?
Well, it was because we did such a great job as a team at SRF. And I was lucky enough to have some quality time talking to John about my experience in event production. And he posed the question, and of course I jumped in. So, and luckily a lot of the SRF community and the people in our LFTN SRF community have stepped up to offer help. So we're going to make it happen.
All right. What's different about this party than Self-Reliance Festival?
Fire!
Oh.
There's a lot more fire. There's a lot more music. There are not demonstrations or speakers. So it's really, this is producing a party, not producing a full spectrum event like we do with SRF.
Does that make it a little easier, or has that had its challenges?
Because of the world I come from, producing Burning Man events for so many years, the second you throw amplified music and fire and alcohol into the mix, everything becomes a little bit more challenging, because there's all of the, even though I know our community and I love our community, it's still a public event. So we need to think about, how do we keep people safe? How do we keep, everything in control while still letting the party go? So there's just a lot of, do we have 18 fire extinguishers available? It's a lot of those little checklists. But I jokingly told my husband, Glenn, many times, I feel like I've been training my whole life for this party. Between all of the things that I've done in my career path, this is kind of, yeah.
We need to do some videos of you like training.
Montage. We need a montage.
You should have seen us in our barn last night. We probably spent an hour going through our section of the big barn we have on our property that just has lighting. And now I have, I think, 12 large bins of lighting that I get to go through later today and see what works and see what we're bringing. So it's barn life meets party life.
Yeah, it's funny how all your communities are coming together into one giant party in just, 6 weeks away?
It's 6 weeks away. We've had 2 weeks of build so far, which has been very productive and successful. And we're kind of at that point in the roller coaster ride where we're just about to hit what I call the oh shit level, where we start to really accelerate into overdrive. But like I said before, I got great people like you guys stepping up to help out and make this a great event.
Awesome. And Shawn, now you were just in Eastern Tennessee and Western North Carolina for a week.
Yep.
What was that like?
Lots of emotions. It was devastating to see the level of damage across such a wide area.
Every time I ask him an important question, his Starlink resets, and then he has to answer the question a second time, because that's just how we roll. So you're going to start your whole answer over again because your Starlink decided it wanted to reset. Go for it.
Okay. So first of all, the level of devastation and how widespread it was pretty surprising. You having been through those areas a decent amount in the past before this happened, I was pretty, I knew what the landscape was supposed to look like. And so seeing 300-foot mudslides that had scoured all the way down to the bedrock layer, and seeing what used to be this nice, beautiful river valley that was now a 50-foot wide layer of bare rock with pieces of houses and cars and tractors and equipment scattered here and there, and trees. So you had some trees that were like uprooted, like, so you had the whole root ball that was washed downstream, which was an interesting visual because there wasn't any more dirt, like all the, the water had washed all the dirt free. And then you had other trees that were literally like bent over at a 45-degree angle with their upstream sides completely scoured of bark. So you knew that those whole trees were underwater as these floodwaters came through. So the scale, roads gone, bridges gone, houses gone, barns gone, churches gone. So that's one emotion, right? And you're meeting these people who lost everything. We met a guy in Pensacola, North Carolina, who had a tenant in a house, and his wife was going to go check on the tenant to say, hey, come to the big house and shelter in place with us. And while that was happening, there was a dam, a temporary dam that had been built by debris that flowed up against a bridge, and that dam broke and it washed the house off the foundation, and his wife didn't make it. The tenant was able to get washed out of the house and grabbed a hold of a branch, and basically ride out the flood water and survive. But you've got people that lost loved ones, you got people that lost pets, you got people that lost livestock, and people that lost everything. And so that was one side of the emotional roller coaster. And then on the other side, I was part of a group of 25 people from Michigan, Wisconsin, Missouri, Tennessee, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Arkansas, that all came together and conglomerated in Jonesboro, Tennessee at Grindstone's main forward operating base. And we all 25 of us went out there. And so you've got these people that are coming in. I mean, the team from Wisconsin brought like literally $1 million worth of earth moving equipment, just loaded up on their trailers, put about 900 gallons of diesel on their vehicle, and got 3 miles a gallon while they drove all this heavy weight, well overweight, but didn't run into one DOT checkpoint, didn't run into one open way station on their way out. And so you have the other side of the emotional roller coaster is everyone that survived, and all they can think about is helping their neighbor, and again, people from all over the country coming in to help people they've never met before. They've got no ties to the area. Some of these people had never been into the Appalachian Mountains before. They just saw on the news and said, you know what? I've got the ability to help and the desire to help. I'm going to figure out a way to get over there and help. And then, of course, we end up at this temporary camp that was set up called Camp Miller, where a guy literally showed up like a week after as soon as the roads were open enough to where he could drive a truck in. He goes in, he meets some locals. They say, yep, you can use our land. So he sets up this whole operating base. People are showing up from Ohio and Arkansas and Louisiana to cook food. Like they're saying, hey, you got 100 volunteers here. They need to be fed 3 meals a day. So they showed up to cook food. And so you get both of those. You're meeting people that lost everything, and your heart breaks for what they're going through. And then it fills right back up, but because you've met all these great people from all over the world, or the country at least, that are coming to help. And then you're meeting people, because in the valley that we were in, you've got this interesting mix of people who have their second house there or own an Airbnb, or like they live there, but then they've also got a house in Colorado and also got a house in Arizona. And then on the other side of the valley, you've got people who are living in a camper while the floor is rotting out. And this was before the flood came through. And so everyone, those different walks of life coming together and being worried about each other. you know, because the mountain people are like, I'll drink water out of the stream. I'll shoot a turkey or a squirrel. Like I can take care of myself. I've got half a bag of charcoal here. You want to take half of that to someone else who might need charcoal? Like literally, those are the kind of questions we're being asked by people that lost everything. And on the other side of the mountain, you've got people saying, hey, you know what? We're going to bring some contractors in to fix our area. If you could just help us by tarping the roof so that we don't get rain in the house while we're waiting for the contractors to come in. And what can we give you to help the people that are less, well off than we are? So yeah, a crazy emotional roller coaster for the whole week. But we've got so much stuff done, and I know I just went on like a 10-minute monologue, but yeah, it was really cool and heartbreaking and devastating and awesome all at the same time.
What did that teach you about community?
Well, it taught me a couple things. I mean, obviously, the first one is you can build a community with people you just met. All you need is to be like-minded. The 25 people that were together at Camp Miller, we created a Facebook page on the back end of the group, a private Facebook page, passed around a phone. Everyone put their contact information in. And I actually met two of the guys on their way back to Arkansas. They were driving right past my exit. So I met them last night for a few minutes on their way home. And we're like, within the next 12 months, we're either going to find another disaster to go deploy to together, or we're going to have a family reunion, And so that was part of it. And then the other thing was, in a lot of these tight-knit small communities, even if you don't necessarily know one another, you have that camaraderie just from being from the same place. Your neighbors, whether you know each other or not. And in the face of a disaster, everyone starts, in the corporate world, we talk about everyone is a draft horse, right? And we all want to plow in the same direction. And that's how we really make things happen. And so when you get a disaster like this, everyone's own individual stuff just goes away and everyone just starts plowing in the same direction. And sometimes you find out what that direction is on the way, but there's no one's going in opposite directions or sideways. And so those are a couple neat takeaways. That
is cool. Do you think 5 years ago, Shawn would have been able to do this?
Oh, absolutely not.
Why not?
I was just so tied up with my corporate life and running a business. I had hundreds, if not thousands of employees that worked for me. And so 5 years ago, I would have said, wow, that sucks. Where can I send some money? I don't have time to help, but I've got financial resources. So what can I do there? And, it's funny because there were several folks in that group that met up with us, and then other people that we met that weren't working directly with us, but were based out of the same camp. And they were in the same position that I was 5 years ago. They just said, you know what? We're going to put our life on hold and go do it. And so that was very impressive to me, because I know 5 years ago, I would have been like, look, I can write a big check, but I just don't have time. I've got too much stuff going on between my employees and stakeholders in the organization and my customers. I can't afford to take off for a week plus to do anything. And so, yeah, being my own boss, being able to just say, yep, I have a couple customers. Like I did have to come back because I'm going out of town tomorrow to go do some sales training for a customer. And so I couldn't go indefinitely, but the folks I was working with at the time, I could say, hey, I'm going to be out of pocket for the next 2 weeks. If your problem is big enough to where you want me to send your money back, I'll do that. Otherwise it'll be 2 weeks. And because nothing I was working on was more important than being able to go out there and help respond to what was happening in East Tennessee and Western North Carolina.
Okay. So this kind of relates, like the role of community and different roles in community. The people out there absolutely need people who can write big checks to write big checks.
Mm-hmm.
People writing big checks feel guilty because they can't be there on the ground.
Yeah, you're right.
What would you say to them?
The more guilty you feel, the more zeros you get put on the end of that check. Because here's another thing, and we saw this after Harvey, with citizens assisting citizens. Nicole, you and I were both pretty involved with that deployment. But one of the things that we saw, and I had a lot of customers and employees and coworkers that lived there at the time. One of the things that we saw there, and I'm sure we'll see here too, is there's always a huge groundswell of support immediately after. And then so you get this massive peak of activity, whether it be donations, whether it be people showing up to help, whatever the case may be, whether it be news coverage, and then it falls off a cliff. All of those things fall off a cliff. And so being able to find organizations that are there, where all of your money is going to be put to use in those communities, and they're not there as long as the news cameras are there and then gone immediately afterwards. That's important because, writing a $10,000 check that can be used a month from now to get people propane and gasoline to run the heaters and the generators that are currently being hooked up for people that aren't going to have power. Being able to kind of build that war chest up so that it can be deployed ongoing to help these people is very important. We even saw the week that we were there, the amount of activity at the beginning of the week versus the end of the week. And that was two things. One, people showing up needing help, because obviously, these folks had a needs board. You'd have 60 jobs on the board in the morning, and by the end of that day, 30 of those were gone. And so obviously, as you knock those high urgency needs out, well, they're not there anymore, but that there's still the need for the ongoing support, and that's the part that doesn't get a ton of coverage. Because news is going to move on to something else. Like a month from now, you're not going to see, let's see, hold on. What is it? When's the election? That's like 3 weeks from now, right? So 3 weeks from now, you're not going to hear anything about Hurricane Helene flood recovery other than the candidates yelling at each other for what they didn't do, And so to be able to build that war chest up now to deploy slowly over time as these people need it is going to be very important. So yeah, don't feel guilty that you can't help physically, because, helping financially is just as important. And here's the other thing I'd say. I didn't do a whole lot of physical work in that week. Like, we had some 18 and 19-year-old kids in our group. They did the vast majority of the physical work. But what I was able to do is manage the different crews, break them up, identify places that they could go make an impact, and then have a job for them to go make another impact as soon as they were over with. So I was really more on the logistics, on managing resource flow from Grindstone's place in Jonesboro to 4 hours away. Even though it was like 19 miles, it was 4 hours because of the roads. Managing the logistics there, managing the relationships within the local group. And it got to the place towards the end of the week where when a new group would show up, what we call the taskmaster, the guy that was interfacing directly with the residents in the area, he would just come to me and say, "Hey, Shawn, 5 people just showed up. This is what equipment they have. This is what their skill set is. Can you help get those guys tasked up so they're not showing up somewhere that someone's already working or the job's not already done?" But that lets me continue to work on the residents that are showing up needing help. And so that was like the thing that I was able to do. And I even while I was there, I was like, man, I'd sure love to go stack the firewood. But I know that making sure hands are ready to take the firewood and deliver it and stack it and know where to go and who the contact is, that was the most important thing that I could do while I was there.
This reminds me of Kiri's human resources just talk that she did at SRF, where she was like, you have to have all these things in place and have thought it through, or else there's a lot of standing around. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And
Right.
needs not being taken care of. so everybody has their role.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to Kiri because she's been quiet for like 15 minutes.
So good.
When you hear that stuff, Kiri, what's your HR brain doing?
That's kind of the perfect job for especially someone like Shawn, because you need someone who's very even-keeled and understands the big picture to be able to get all the infinite pictures taken care of within that. And I never thought of, for some reason, I never thought about a position like that in disaster relief, because part of my hesitation with jumping in was what resources can I offer? You know, thinking about human logistics and what do we need where, and what are our big first level goals, second level goals, and achievement type of scenario. You know, that is one of the most critical roles, I think, on any disaster relief. You know, hats off to you, Shawn, for being that pivot person. But that is the sign of a very successful operation, is the fact that you do have those key people involved saying, you know what, that team has already pulled back in. They, you know, have let us know about these other issues, and making sure that you have that one person really seeing the network as much as possible and being the connection point to other teams. That is, to me, a perfect setup.
Yeah, it definitely allowed work to happen quickly when the need was identified, versus when we showed up. The very first story that we heard, you know, from the guy that was running Camp Miller was, yeah, our biggest problem right now is that someone comes in and puts something on the board and 4 people all go out to do that same job, which means 3 jobs that could be going on aren't happening.
And it builds confidence in your results as a team.
Yeah, for sure.
Volunteers aren't showing up and spinning their wheels doing things that have already been done.
Yeah.
It helps your internal, you know, pride and teamwork. It also helps the way you're experienced from the outside, from new people coming in, going, they've really got this ironed down and locked in tight and know their operation. So it builds a lot of strength and confidence in both directions for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we sometimes experience a thing here called the redneck bottleneck when we have projects going on. And Shawn is the kind of personality that's going to get stuff done anyway. And I just remember this key moment when he was at my house and we needed to do some stuff to get ready for an event. And we needed the dolly, and it was loaded with, I don't know, something not breakable. And he said, well, can we just, like, where's the stuff go? And we were waiting for a decision on where it goes. And the redneck was not around to give that decision. And Shawn just looks at me with this malicious look in his eye, goes with his arm, and dumps out the stuff. And then they took the dolly and got the work done and put the wood back on it when they were done. But it was just that he was like, well, I'm not letting that stop me do the next task. It's in my way. It will be out of my way next.
Yeah. T will know where to find this stack of lumber. It's right next to where he left it, just not in the same configuration.
I think it was last year at one of the SRFs, I actually heard Shawn say, I don't care how it happened. What's the solution?
Yeah.
Like there was no anger. There was no irritation. You just had no time to worry about how it happened and who to blame. It was, what do we need? How do we solve it? Which is,
fix the problem and then figure out what led to the problem and see if you can avoid that for the next one.
Right.
Correct. But no time for planning.
I always say it doesn't matter why, it matters that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, you know, there is a point where you do want to examine your process that led you to there, but while you have the problem to solve is not that time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't care whose feelings made that happen or whatever. It's like, okay, whatever. This is my reality now. These are the tools I have. Let's go. And that's, I think that's why Kiri and I work so well together on events, is it's just like, it's not an emotional thing. It's like, these are the variables that are all happening in any event that happens. You have different things going wrong that you could have never guessed.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of something with that many moving pieces. And so the best strength you can have on site are people who are like the people on this discussion, where it's like, okay, don't care, let's fix it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It's not personal. I mean, especially when you're working on any sort of structured event, relief, whatever it is, you don't have time to slow your roll. You need to get to the solution. And it has to be completely neutral. Like I don't care X, Y, or Z. I just need a solution. And that's depersonalizing that. This isn't my baby shower. This is not my wedding reception. This is someone else's party. And what they want, whether it be SRF, whether it be an SOE party, it's the end result that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can tell you a story from one of the last days that I was out in North Carolina. We had another group that had come in and they were doing great work. But it was basically hands and feet, right? These guys were shovelers, which is needed, right? But one of the guys came over and he was like, "Hey, we've got this area. We've kind of cleaned everything out that we can, but we need a mini skid steer to kind of get in there and get the last of this stuff out of this person's basement." And we had a mini skid steer as part of the equipment that was brought down with our crew. And I said, "Okay, I'll put that on the list, and we'll see if we can get to it or not." And then he came back the next day and he's like, "Hey, were you guys able to do that?" I said, "No. Mini skid steer is actually putting in an ATV trail right now because there's 11 houses up past where 3 different bridges were washed out. And those 11 households worth of people are walking 2 miles to get hot food." Mm-hmm. So putting in a trail where they can at least take a motorized thing back and forth, that's what we're using, that piece of equipment. And then he came back later the same day, and this was in the middle of me kind of turning it over to the guy that was replacing me as the team leader. And so while he was there, I said, "Look, I understand this is important for you, and I understand this is important for the homeowner because they want to get in their basement and get their stuff out. I completely understand that. But we've got a limited number of people and resources here, and we are always going to evaluate the jobs on the board and deploy those where they're going to make the biggest impact." Okay. So for example, putting in a trail where 11 households can be accessed. And by the way, there was more houses up of that we couldn't even build a trail through because it was like car-sized boulders that were in the way. But the day I left, and I got a video of these guys rolling out, a 15-person mule team showed up. And guess what they used to get to that upper area? They used the trail that we put in because we could get any motorized equipment past like that 11th house. So no one could check on those upper. I mean, we had some guys that hiked up there and like got in contact information, but those mule teams were able to take blankets and propane bottles and stuff like that up there. And so it was one of those things where everyone's got something that's super important to them, but there's got to be someone who prioritizes everything. And even though it might be your number one priority, it's not the number one priority. And so again, and I kind of felt like the guy his like pride was hurt because he may have promised the homeowner, "Oh yeah, we'll get you over there." So it was like, in those scenarios, there can be no pride. Everyone's got to be focused on is helping whatever way that they can. And like I said, with our 25 people, that there was zero pride. There was zero, there's zero ownership, right? There was ownership in getting the job done, but there was no ownership like, "Oh, well, we're not going to go do this thing that I wanted to do. That's bullshit." There was none of that.
Yeah.
Which allowed us to make in 6 days, we did what 100 people weren't able to do in the 7 days before us,
Everybody check their ego at the door.
100%.
That's what it said at my CrossFit gym wall, and they were not wrong.
Yeah.
It was a good lesson. It's a good reason to go join CrossFit, actually.
Right.
You just got to find the right one. Okay. So as we're thinking about this as relates to community, how much does participating in like these live events we've done, Shawn, I think now for 8 years together, how much is that foundation feeding into the capacity to function? Like, do you think it's important for people to do that, or?
Yeah, 100%. Partly because of what I just said. I think that when you've got everyone that is focused on an end result, like we want to put on a good event. We want, whether it's a workshop, whether it's a festival, whatever the case may be, when you've got a lot of different people that are all willing to check their ego, identify what needs to be done, and just knock those things out and then ask for the next thing to be done. That's important. The other side of that coin is we all have different personalities. And so you've got to be able to, so I could have told that guy to F off, like, this is our machine. We're going to do what we want to do with it. I told you yesterday that I had you on the board, right? But that would not have been productive. So being able to have those conversations and try to level set across different priorities that different people have, and just say, hey, I understand that's your number one priority. Because I'll tell you what, when I had the conversation with the guy, he was like, all right, cool, man, I appreciate it. Turned his 4-wheeler around, and I'm assuming went and started cutting firewood for someone, rather than being mad and going back to his tent and crying or whatever the case might have been. So being part of these live events where things go sideways, sometimes things go sideways in the middle of the event. Sometimes things go sideways during the event. Sometimes you think someone's working on something and you find out 5 weeks before the event starts that they were sidetracked and really haven't done anything with it. So, those kind of things, being able to just take that information in and reprioritize and keep going was a huge help.
The ability to be nimble and pivot is something that you only learn by doing these kind of in-person live interaction events, whether it be rescue, whether it be coming to an event and volunteering, and really seeing how the whole network works together, because there's a certain amount of it that's very visible to people. And there's another huge layer with all of these that is invisible or very subtle to people. And I think that the more people get out of their comfort zone and do these interactions and start to volunteer and start to step up and help when the community needs them, it's like building any other muscle memory. You build your confidence. You start to see that if you have a leader who is ego-driven, and we've all worked for people who have been ego-driven leaders, there's very little inspiration to follow.
Right.
Okay. But the people who have made an impact, at least on my life, and I'm sure yours, are those leaders that, they're in a crazy place. They're in a complete storm of what to do next, but they keep it level and they never get mean, and they're always kind to people, and they're leading the way that they should be leading. I mean, servant leadership is something that has been huge in my life. I'm never going to ask someone to do something that I personally wouldn't do.
Right.
And I think that what is special about our events and the rescue and the community networking that we do is it all comes from a place of servant leadership.
Right.
And that just continues to teach people a new and better way.
Yeah. Go ahead, Nicole.
Oh, I was going to say, it's been interesting to watch different communities reacting to the emergency. And then also many of these communities have events, and some of them have like weekly meetings and that sort of thing, and have a lot of organizational structure and have reacted 0% to help people outside of their immediate area. And to me, that was a little disappointing, but at the same time, I'm like, it's their decision, right? Like, It's totally cool. But then I'm like, why are you organizing like that if you can't help? Wherein like our partner festivals have all been all in on what can we do to get money out there, to get resources out there, to go out there and put hands on if we can, that sort of thing. And I think that's in part because of the culture developed in our community of doing things. And I credit you, Shawn, with that culture of doers coming into the LFTN network, because I was like, I know we need to do something, but I don't know what to do. And you're like, well, I'm just going to show up every weekend until we're ready for the first event we did here. And, and I was like, okay, I'm going to make sure there's food and beer and whatever so that we can get this done. And we had no infrastructure here at all at that time.
Right.
And, hordes of people just showed up and we were ready for that first event. Yep. And it was great. It was a really good time.
100%.
I recall screaming John Denver at the top of my lungs in the middle of the night one Saturday night. But
that sounds like a campfire story.
Yeah.
And here's the thing that I'll tell everyone listening. If you've got a chance, go do some disaster relief, because you're going to meet people that have the same type of values that you do, or they wouldn't be there, right? So you want to talk about building community. What better place to build community than on site at a disaster with a bunch of other people that are there to do the same thing you are, which is help, right? And the second piece of that advice would be, and we've kind of said it a few times, but check your ego. So when I got involved with all of this, it was at SRF upstairs, mid-afternoon on Saturday. I'm talking to Bear, and he's kind of telling me what's going on there. And, people not having power is a significant issue. And I was like, well, I happen to know a thing or two about off-grid power. So why don't I start going around and trying to round up either free or vastly reduced cost equipment, and we can build portable power stations for these people, put it on a pallet, and even places you can only get to by helicopter, you can sling load these things and drop them right on top of where they need to go. And that was our conversation. And it was like, yep, let's go. And so at the event, and I mentioned this, I think, Nicole, the first live after SRF, we had 100 solar panels donated for free. We had brand new batteries and inverters that were, sorry, my daughter was going outside and I was like, who's opening the door? We had brand new inverters and batteries that were basically being donated at manufacturing costs. And so the plant, and I even built, I came home and I built one of these and took pictures of it and sent it off to the executive director of Grindstone. And so that was the plan. And I would start packing everything up and getting my vehicle ready to go and this and that. And then he comes back and says, hey, we don't have room on the fob to build these. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll still be there Saturday, whatever y'all need me to do. Right. And so it turned into, I was planning on being in Jonesboro, Tennessee for 7 days, just trying to pump out as many power stations as I could with one or two helpers. To I get there Saturday, and by midday Sunday, it's, hey, we're putting together a team to go to North Carolina to a place that's basically completely shut off or cut off. And we want you to run the team. Like, oh, okay, well, that is 100% not what I was planning on doing, but sure, let's go. I'm camping in my car, so we don't need any infrastructure there. I brought food and water for 7 days. So, and it turns out when we got there that the camp was pretty well provisioned, but it was just one of those things where I could have been like, oh, I did all this work to get all these vendors lined up, and I built one of these things and sent you a video, and now you're telling me that you don't even have, you can't make room. By the way, there was room. I just don't think he realized that it was going to take a little bit of room, not a ton. But I could have gotten mad and just said, well, screw you guys, and so if you come into these events, which again, everyone should do, but with that open mind of, okay, well, I've got a skill set, but if that skill set's not needed, I'll do something else. Like, you need me to stack firewood, I'll stack firewood, because it's going to help somebody. And that's the idea. So those are my two advice to anyone that's listening is, number one, go do it. Number two, show up with zero ego, an open heart, and a willingness to do whatever's needed.
And talk to people. Like, you have an opportunity on December 7th to go to Camden, Tennessee and see a party. It's not a teaching event. It's not a coaching event. It's not a community development event, although it is, because all events do that. But it's not being run in that way. It's like, hey, let's have a really good time and blow off some steam.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm learning a lot. One of the focuses of this is about overland camping, which my husband and I have been basically professional campers for years and know maybe one or two people that do that. But it's an open invitation for people with overland rigs to come out and, do some info sharing, show off their rig, show people what they've put together. I'm excited to learn a lot about that in the midst of the party.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what's happening at the party, Kiri, so far?
So far, well, we've got a comedy show. They're actually going to be doing a roast off. John Willis has volunteered himself to be the roastee, and there are multiple roasters. Now I sound like I'm talking about your business, Nicole.
I'm like, maybe I need to roast John.
And there is going to be a prize for the top roasters, which I'm kind of excited to hear about. We've got DJs. We've got Lil White and Supreme Lyric performing, so there'll be a couple of rap shows. We've got Fire. We will have Thunder's Dome. We will have a little of everything. Food trucks, multi-level VIP experience. Those details should be coming out by probably the end of this week. We're going to have a couple of tiers. Each tier will have kind of different access and different, gifts and awards that go with it. We've got a lot of different vendors that are signing up, both inside and outside the factory. There's going to be great music. I've even figured out a way to create kind of a quiet conversation space in the midst of all of this chaos. I think you'll be interested to see what we do with the greenhouse on the SOE compound. It will be a nice, relaxing break from all of the, fiery anarchy that I'm putting in there.
Well, and that is the perfect winter location for something like that.
Yes.
It is not the perfect summer location, but it's a great winter location.
And we're just trying to, again, one, I don't know if this is a big secret, but this is kind of tied into John's birthday. Actually, the day of the party, multiple people that we know have their birthday on December 7th, including Sunny Puzikas,
Who's here?
Hi, Sunny.
Hi, Sunny.
I'm really hoping Sunny and the family can make it up because I would love to celebrate his birthday with him. But it's just, John hasn't been able to really throw a big SOE party since kind of before COVID. So this is going to be the best of all of the events that I think that we've produced so far. And it's all coming together, but we are still asking, please RSVP for the event. Let us know you're coming so that we make sure that we are prepared. If you want to volunteer, we're always looking for people to help, whether it be inside or outside or for 1 hour or longer. We kind of tailor everything to what people want to do. And just, if you want to vend, it's open for vendors. We are not charging any vendor fees. We just want people to come and, make some sales and meet some people and have a great time.
I have a personal question for you.
But
would you say event management and planning is your passion?
Yeah.
Did you know that 2 years ago?
Yeah, I think I did. I just was so stuck in my corporate HR world of predictability and stability and whatnot. But I mean, I started producing events in the early 90s in Chicago at a little nightclub called Excalibur. So taking all the worlds and the jobs and the things that I've done, I feel like I said, this is a really great culmination and I'm very good at it and I really enjoy it. And I think that if I accomplish my goal or our goals for December 7th, I think there's going to be a lot of people having a really amazing time.
So what would you say had to change in your life to allow you to realize I can take this passion and actually just do it?
An opportunity. Honestly, Nicole, you were a big part of it because when you asked me to join the SRF team, it was really about doing real event production again. And the freedom that you gave me to come into the team kind of at the last second and help out where I could kind of reignited that fire a lot. And seeing what we as a team produced for this SRF was honestly breathtaking. I got to see Nicole actually able to have time to talk to people. I saw John Willis running around smiling and being happy and having a great amount of interaction. Every time I saw Shawn, you had a smile from ear to ear on your face and we're always on the run. But it seemed like every person I talked to really got the most out of this last SRF. And that really lit that fire for me again of I'm pretty good at this. And I think that this is something that I should really dig deeper into.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think you're going to offer services available for event planning in the future?
I absolutely will. My husband and I have had a conversation about Thunderhill events and adding that into our LLC umbrella. and really seeing, if people want support with event production, and whether it be a private party or a public event, if it's, and I think I'm being honest when I say this, if it's beyond my capabilities, I know people that I can tap in, but I'm also very good at saying, this is what I'm really good at. This is the stuff I'm not as good at that we should probably find someone else to manage.
Mm-hmm.
And, as long as I'm honest with myself about my capabilities and I'm honest to whoever I'm working with about it, I think that we will have success in any direction.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't realize that you had that passion until the spring SRF. I was like, I think she'd be a good event planner. And I think I don't love planning events. And then I started talking to you more and I was like, yep, I don't know what we need where on this team at this point, but I know that with my responsibilities going on in the background that we need extra hands. And you just jumped in, and it was that same thing we talked about with Shawn, where no ego about who does what. So it's just like, do something and do something complimentary. And I think that's why that transition, which happened very quickly in the middle of summer, basically, was so helpful. And I don't know, like, if I had like been introduced to you, having never met you before, if it would have been that easy to bring you in, because there was a high level of trust going in, having met you in person and seeing how you operated at multiple events in person. And then I have that same high level of trust with Shawn for similar reasons. And then he had also seen you. So like the whole team, it wasn't like you were some rando. The thing that always bothered me in business before was when the leaders brought in the consultant to fix the problems, and they didn't fix the problems, but they charged a lot of money for it.
Yeah.
Best job in business.
Nodding, you're like, yep. Mm-hmm.
Best job in business. Pay me to come in and tell you what you already know and give you an idea that you're not going to follow.
100%. 100%.
Well, I don't do that anymore.
Well, one thing I thought that was really amazing to see the strength of the communities that we've built, especially at SRF, was whether it was the Friday night charcuterie, whether it was the amazing Saturday night dinner. Look at how many people outside of AJ and his wonderful wife, but look at how many people were out there serving the meals and helping bus tables and helping plate and helping. It was breathtaking to me to just see how many pillars of our community just jumped in with no question. And they were like, no, we're getting this done because it's about the end goal of this is going to be a success. And I don't think there was no way that AJ could have in any way, shape, or form failed at that dinner. But seeing the wave of people behind him wanting to be a part of it and wanting to just have their hand in that success and make sure it is just top notch, that was really breathtaking to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's been an element that's always been there. I think we haven't always taken advantage of the positive, like the best advantage of it, because you don't always see it in the moment. I know that we had like the rabbit challenge of having rabbits to process meant rabbits were sourced from 2 places. Mm-hmm. And had Tim Riley known I needed 8 rabbits originally, it had like I communicated that message louder and further sooner, he wouldn't have processed rabbits right before the event. So he ended up driving out like I think an hour from SOE to go get the other rabbits. I was like, we have to figure out who's picking up these rabbits. Like I was perfectly prepared to drive off site and do that, but I didn't think it was a good idea to leave. And he's like, well, I'll get them. Can I get them in an hour? And it all came together and he brought the rabbits back the next day, I think it was. But yeah, it was a whole, like, he just like appeared out of nowhere and was like, I can get the rabbits. And I'm like, Tim Riley in a cape.
Seriously.
I even have water for them, Nicole. I'm like, 2 capes.
Double layer cape.
Double cape. Yeah. So that was really cool. And I'm sure you're starting to see that now. Have you figured out your audio issue yet? Who's going to do like the audio PA system?
We have lots of messages out,
okay.
Starting first with the talent to make sure what they are requiring and what they may or may not be bringing. And then audio backline is an easy thing for me to get put together.
Okay, I was gonna say, because I know somebody kind of local, but I would have to reach out to him for you, and that's a whole.
The tricky thing is we need an engineer who's worked with rap artists and DJs before. Make sure, because it's a totally different leveling system that I could drone on about for hours, but I'm not.
Where you have to get a lot of the if they're doing loops and pre-recorded things like that, has to interface well, or else it sucks.
Yes.
So, which is a whole different layer.
Yep.
Awesome.
You know how that is. Cool. Well, what do you see in the future, guys? Are we going to be rebuilding homes in North Carolina in January? And is Kiri doing 4 parties a year for SOE?
I'll tell you, from the North Carolina standpoint, there's still communities that are relatively cut off up there. The recon team for Grindstone actually located a community that was in North Carolina, but all of the road access on the North Carolina side was gone. So you could get there from Tennessee, but you had this catch-22 where none of the North Carolina support could get there. None of the Tennessee support was worried about it because it was in North Carolina. And so apparently there's a couple communities like that. And so they're working on trying to get something like what we had in Pensacola, Camp Miller, set up in those areas as well. Because it's like, again, they were just forgotten communities. And we're, this is, what are we, 3 weeks out, almost 4 weeks out from the actual.
Almost in a month.
Yeah. So it's September 26th, I guess, when the hurricane hit. And of course there was some flooding, low-lying flooding before the hurricane actually came in. So I don't even know what day it is, but it's been like 3 to 4.
22nd of October. We're like,
yeah. So it's basically been 4 weeks.
From the month. Yeah.
But can you imagine? And so this is another thing that's come out of this. I'm going to talk to our sheriff and the mayor of both the county and the city about what does our plan look like? Because I'm in Tennessee. We've got not quite as steep, but a similar structure in terms of lots of hollers and valleys with rivers running through it. I got the Tennessee River 3 miles that way. I got the Buffalo River 7 miles that way. Buffalo River being the longest undammed river in the state. So if it starts to flood, there's nothing to control it, at least when you've got like the Nolichucky Dam system and the TVA, you can start opening gates or closing them to buffer the water flow. And then, the Nolichucky just got overrun. I think they said it had, at the peak, it had 1.2 million gallons per second flowing over the dam, which, to put that in perspective, Niagara Falls averages between 600,000 and 700,000 gallons per second. So you're talking about nearly double Niagara Falls per second continuously. And so again, it's encouraged me to go sit down with the county and the city and the sheriff and say, what is our plan? Because I can tell you from talking to the folks on the ground what worked and what didn't. Communications is huge. So look up Little Germany, Tennessee, if you want an example of a place where that was completely and totally cut off, and a guy with a Baofeng UV5R radio was able to get on ham or, get on UHF and get in touch with ham operators and actually get the message out that they were cut off. And Grindstone literally backpacked gear because there were 0 roads getting up there. They literally backpacked gear up there and delivered to these folks, got them a Starlink set up so they could actually communicate with cell phones. But comms, if the event happens in summer, you got to worry about keeping folks cool, especially elderly people and infants. If it happens in the winter, that's a completely different set of issues. And in Tennessee, TVA has done a fantastic job over the last 70 years of getting everyone to go electric everything, electric stove, electric water heater, electric heat. And so when you lose power, you lose everything. How many people had wells in the ground that couldn't get water out of it? Now, that was part of my talk at SRF. You have 40 trillion gallons of water drop out of the sky, and the most by mass, the number one thing that was delivered to these places was bottled water, because no one was collecting it, no one was storing it. Everyone was getting their water out of the ground, and then when they didn't have power, they didn't have access to it. So even something as simple as, I've got a Honda 2000 UI generator, but it's 120 volt output. If my well is 240, I can't use my generator. I can use my generator to keep my food from spoiling, but I can't use it to get water out of the ground. So, and I can tell you right now, no one knows that. I talk to people all the time about water resiliency, and the first question I ask if they tell me they have a well, is it 120 volt or 240 volt pump? No one knows the answer to that question.
I know the answer to that question.
You know. But, just simple stuff like that. Like, okay, in our county, how many people are on well water? How many people are on city water? Right? The people, if we have a flood event, city water is going to go away. If we have a power outage event, then well water is going to go away. So just little stuff like that.
Well, I mean, how do you know the water is safe? Because if you're on well water, or I'm on spring water, so I instantly get the poisons in my water if there's a flood, right?
Yep.
How do you make your water safe? That's what I started thinking about after that, because I have water storage.
Right.
But if my water is full of heavy metals, then that's going to give me cancer.
Yeah. So there is a significant. So you ever heard the saying, the solution for pollution is dilution? Right. So one of the things that came out as we were going through this East Tennessee, Western North Carolina stuff is, you might have had a valley cut through the middle of a landfill. Okay. And you got 50 years of whatever in there. Okay. And then if you've ever heard these horror stories about, like, I won't name any specific company names, but multinational chemical companies whose methodology for dealing with toxic waste, when the EPA was signed into law and they had 20 years worth of nastiness, was literally in some places just putting in 55-gallon metal drums and burying it, whether it was on their site facility, or sometimes they bought a farmer's place and started just burying stuff on their land. And so when you have a flood like this, we heard there was companies that used to dump toxic sludge into old mines. So subsurface mines that were no longer in service, companies would buy that, and they would just literally back trucks up with a hose and dump and dump and dump. And so then you end up with a flood, and all of that stuff is washed out. And so there was a lot of conversation about, the PVC plant that was upriver. You had a nuclear fuels plant that was upriver. You had all these other, land fills and water treatment facilities that were all flooded. And so generally what we were told was, the water's probably not a problem, because there was so much water. Any pollutants are probably
in the ocean. Oh, there it is. Starlink cuts out again right when he gets to the important point, because that is the nature of the Starlink stream. But he'll be back in a minute. Does this terrify you when you hear about all the poison water?
Yes.
Kiri? Yeah.
It does.
Okay. Yeah. So, Shawn, you were right at the place where you were saying all of these pollutants are well, and I was like asking you if they were in the ocean, and then you cut off. So finish your statement.
Yeah. So diluted was the word I was going to use. So you have a lot of toxins that ended up in the water, but you had 40 trillion gallons of water. So that's number one. But that means that what that does mean is that all the silt and sand and small stuff that was deposited on people's property, there is a possibility of that being contaminated at much higher levels than what the water would have been. And so that's obviously something. When you've got, we saw Samaritan's Purse out there, literally 20 people with muck boots and a COVID dust mask and shovels shoveling out people's basement. And obviously that's stuff that is needed, but we were under very clear direction we're not mucking out people's houses. If we can muck something out with a machine, that's one thing, but we're not shovel brigade. And so, so I say all of that to say, if your well is drawing from an aquifer, you were probably okay. And the further up in elevation you were, or the further back in the river system you were probably okay. So someone asked this question. I'm part of a well group on Facebook, and someone asked the question, hey, can I trust the well water? And essentially what I said was, if you're downstream of Erwin, Tennessee, any part of that river system, through probably Dandridge, which is where Douglas Dam is, I wouldn't trust the well water. I'm not saying I wouldn't use it. I'm just saying I would treat it once it comes out of the well. If you're upstream of Erwin, below about 2,500 foot of elevation, I would probably still treat it before I drank it. And if you're above 2,500 foot of elevation, there isn't anything upstream of you that's a problem other than cemeteries and septic tanks. And again, all of that was just, there was so much water that it kind of, it's nasty to think about, but the reality is it's probably not a health problem, that your existing system that you already had on your well, whether that be UV or sediment filters or carbon filters or whatever the case may be. If your well water was okay over 2,500 feet before this event, it's probably okay now. But where I am, if we're far enough down the Tennessee River system where if there was massive flooding in the area, I would tell no one to use any water that's coming out of a water treatment plant because of the heavy metals and the forever chemicals that are 100% guaranteed to be in it.
Kiri, what were you about to say about water pollution?
It absolutely terrifies me because, we're well water based up here and haven't gotten our rain collection system built yet. So that is definitely, if not the end of this year, it is an early next year, getting all the rain capture and filtering done, because just because we're near the Great Lakes doesn't mean we have dependable water.
Yeah.
Yeah. Water was always something I didn't worry about too much. And now I'm like, I need to readdress. Like, I have some water redundancies in, but we need to readdress that there too. So yeah. If only I knew a guy.
Yeah, if only you knew a guy.
All right, guys. Well, we're coming up on an hour. Let's go once around the horn, starting with you, Kiri. Okay. Tell us about Thunderhill, but also, when is the SOE party and why should people go and why should they make that decision now? And why should they fill out the form and how do they fill out the form?
So the party is Saturday, December 7th at the SOE compound. This is the 2024 SOE compound party. There will be camping available Friday night. So if you want to get in early and really meet the team and maybe help us for an hour or two, that's great, not required. But there'll be camping, hammock or tent camping in the back Friday night, Saturday night. We're going to ask everybody to be out Sunday, probably around 3 or 4 p.m. We have got a packed stage show. We will have specific collectible items from SOE that are specifically only going to be available at this event. This is another great time to network and meet a lot of people in the community, as well as just have time to have those good conversations and conspire together, breathe the same air together, and make your big plans. Something that we've done through this one is really starting to identify and activate the people in our community who literally should be helping us plan these things. Chuck Peoples has joined the team, and he is my EMS, he's our EMS and ops and safety and so much more. There's so much more about Chuck that I didn't know he had the expertise in that he does. But we're doing that with a lot of people of going, we've seen you in the community. We think that this might be something that you'd be fantastic at. Is it something you're interested in? So that we can start to build that next, I don't want to say generation, but that next level of leadership for these types of events. So it's not just a party. It's also a really great opportunity to see if leadership is something that you want to step into or something that you want to try out with these kind of events. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be a blast. Everybody's going to be there. I I have it on good opinion that, there's going to be some birthday cake for people, and it'll just be another great opportunity to get together and continue to build and strengthen this community. And then Thunderhill Farm is my little farm here in northern Wisconsin. I make some of the best sauces you've ever had, and I grow everything organically from seed and then turn that into the products that I deliver to you at all of our in-person events. And that's this is the year of the jalapeno. We'll leave it at that.
I need to harvest mine before the next freeze, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I doctored them through the first one. Okay, Shawn, what are you going to be doing at the SOE party, and how do people connect with you to get their water system?
Sure. I will be doing nothing productive at the SOE party. I am there as an attendee. I'm just there to meet some cool people and have fun. You can find me at Hack My Homestead. I'm basically the off-grid everything guy, whether that be power, water, gray water, black water, site development, spring development, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to increase your resiliency without relying on the grid or the systems that are provided to you by other people that can fail based on nothing that you have anything to do with, I can help you out with that. Like I said, hackmyhomestead.com or at hackmyhomestead at pretty much all the socials.
Awesome. And I'm Nicole Sauce from the Living Free in Tennessee podcast and Hollow Roast Coffee. And I have always wondered what it's like to just go to an event and have fun. And I'm still going to wonder. I'm going to have fun either way as a participant. But John Willis is having a party in winter when it's cold, and I roast coffee. Hollow Roast is delighted to be coming to the Special Operations Equipment Party on December 7th. And we're so excited about it that I have spent the last couple weeks, in case you wonder why I haven't been talking about SRF much, I spent the last couple of weeks testing different ways of making sipping chocolate, which we will be serving at SRF in addition to having coffee and coffee things for sale. And we too will have a limited count special item that comes with the first cups of sipping coffee that are chocolate that sell. But I've really discovered it's all about choosing the right chocolate for that. And we did some experimentation here on how we can get it out in small enough batches that it's delicious, but fast enough that people aren't pissed off. So definitely come check out Hollow Roast while you're there. I'm hoping to have enough helpers that I can get out and see some of the music and the comedy and all of the other things going on at the compound. And I'm sure that will come together. So guys, you fill out the RSVP form by going to the Special Operations Equipment page on Facebook.
There is it.
Click on events and look for the link, and you fill that out so Kiri knows how much food and beverage to have on hand, because that's super important. Plus, depending on the number of campers there Friday night, Hollow Roast will have morning coffee Saturday if there's more than 5 of you camping. And I don't know if people are camping on site or if they're going to be in hotels or how that's going to work. So I'd love to know too. Get that done. We'll see you soon, and we'll be back on next week. Next week, we're actually doing an Unloose the Goose reunion episode at 9:30 on Tuesday with Jack Spirko, CJ Kilmer, John Bush, and myself. So we'll see you next week for that.
All right.